Everyone, thank you very much for waiting. And everyone who is on YouTube, thank you for joining us today. This is September the 1st, and beginning from 2 o'clock, 2 p.m., CCBT and Sound Technology Audio Game Future. This is event title, and at CCBT, we have the Audio Game Center plus CCBT is currently being held, and we have the guest from overseas, and thus we would like to hold a special talk session. And we have simultaneous interpretation. And I would like to introduce participants Miyuki Tanaka and Nozawa-san and Mr. Giori Politi from Lo-Fi People. And we have the blind drive being exhibited here today, and he's the developer of this blind drive. Thank you for joining us. And those who are joining on YouTube, we have both Japanese and English links. So please make sure that you are on the right channel. And to begin, Audio Game Center plus CCBT is something that you may not have been visited. So we would like to introduce who we are and then do some demonstration of the blind drive. And then we would like to have the discussion of the three people. And Miyuki Tanaka is the moderator for this event. Hello, everyone. I am Miyuki Tanaka. We would like to briefly introduce ourselves, describing ourselves for people who have visual impairment. I have black hair, and my hair is up to chin, and this is so-called self-description process to describe ourselves. It is kind of a common practice that we do for people when we have participants who have the visual disabilities. So I am black hair, straight hair, and my hair is up to chin and have a casual white t-shirt. Kazuyo Kinoshita is the artist who I have visited exhibition recently, and I'm wearing a heart t-shirt. Thank you. Everyone, hello. My name is Nozawa, Yukio Nozawa. I am short-haired, black hair, and I wear blue shirt with black pants. This shirt is slightly casual. Which part of that is casual? Well, maybe I see a pattern like snow, flower pattern. So my shirt has little patterns. And I'm very excited to be here today.
My name is Giori Politi. I'm from Tel Aviv. I have a short brown hair, brown eyes. I'm wearing casual t-shirt, purple, and I have a necklace, small necklace, and white pants.
はい、じゃ
Thank you very much. So briefly, I would like to explain about this exhibition and also our activities. We are running the DDD project, Disability Driven Design Project, starting from 2016. We rather started the activities to communicate in new ways with blind people and also play with sound. That is what we have been experimenting. And I met Nozawa-san. And then we have started the peculiar activities towards the audio game. So Audio Game Center plus CCBT. To date, we have exhibited our product and make people play with those games, but we want to increase the number of audio game players. So such fun part and the creation should be connected. So we do the hackathon at this venue, and also we are able to invite Giori-san, and we are able to discuss about the future of this audio game. So we are trying to increase such exposures. So we are at this audio game center. So if you have time, I want you to enjoy the game. But what is audio game? That's how we would like to begin this session. Nozawa-san, please. Allow me to briefly explain about the audio game. Before I do that, I would like to introduce myself. My name is Yukio Nozawa. I am totally blind. Normally, I work for a company in Tokyo as an engineer. As a hobby, I develop audio game. I've been working on this for 16 years. I have come up with more than 50 audio games, and on my webpage, you are able to access to those games that I had developed. And there are many audio games socially available, but I think I have covered almost all of those. Recently, I do not have enough time to enjoy games, so maybe I am not covering recent games. But when it comes to the audio games, I think I do have quite a knowledge. Now, I would like to talk about what is audio game. I don't have any slide. Sorry. I didn't prepare the slide for this talk, but I will show the demo after this, so please look forward to that. The audio games. There is no specific definition what is audio game from where to where. However, it normally uses only sound, and people are able to enjoy the game that is widely defined as audio games. So at Audio Game Center, created from sound. That is what we call as audio games. If there are visuals already existing and sound accessibility added afterwards, those are not something we define as audio games. Originally, audio games, many of those are developed by a visually impaired people. In 1990s and early 1990s, such movement had started. But prior to that, in United States, sound-only toys had been commercialized. Some popular ones could be Puppet, Puppet Puppet. That is the name of the toy. In Japanese, we call it Puppet or Puppet. Maybe we can define those as audio games. But using PC, people started to enjoy audio games in 1990s. That's what we define.
So at that time, the iMac or MS-DOS, those pure PCs were widely used at that time in the 1990s. And at that time, there was a sound, beeping sound was emerged and used. So using this beep sound, the audio games were played, or else maybe it was a text-based game created. When the world enters into the 20th century, within the game, the sound file is now reproducible at that point of time, which was recorded beforehand. And by reproducing the recorded sound, suddenly the audio game had started to evolve. And starting 2000s, it's already 24 years after we entered this 2000s. And within this 25 years or so, we believe that there's already more than 1,000 productions released. The various audio game genre has been emerging, so we believe that any imaginable genre that people think this is an audio game is now existing. So how can we play action games just only by sounds, or else just play RPG by sounds? How do we all make this the methodology of audio games? So we ask players to have a headphone, and the sound could sound ringing from the left ear or the right ear over the player's head, or else maybe from the very center of both of his center of his ears, either left or right. And this is by changing the volume of the left and right, it is realized in many aspects, in many ways. So the amount of information, in order for the quantity of information to increase, the height of the volume of the sound and how to change the volume, we have several methodologies for that too. In these days, we are calling the 3D binaural audios, and using that, the left hand and the right hand side, or else the top to bottom, the sound could be enjoyed in all aspects from all 3D areas, and that is spreading. And lastly, finally, how does the people with impaired vision impairment create audio games? I would like to touch upon and introduce you several challenges that we face. So audio games are created mainly by the programmer having impairment for visions. That is what I introduced. And many of those developers using the programming language creating audio games from scratch. So usually these days people use game engines, therefore the games could be created relatively easily. For instance, within the game, there's a block inserted and the block will be moved around, and whether things are clashing inside. If the game engine is used, then it's very easy to judge whether the inside features are indeed clashing itself or not. However, if we are impaired with vision, most of the game engines within the world is difficult for us to use because it's using a very graphical interface, And moving, we have to be able to use our mouse, or else creating game by game engine is such a difficulty for the impaired developers for visions. So vision impaired developer uses such calculation features in order to write their the games, audio games, the formulas. So you really have to be well versed in the calculations and the formula, or else we will not be able to develop. And another challenge is that we face is that when we are to sell our audio games, all the costs that we have spent and to collect our profit as our profitability, that is a difficult thing for us to do. The reason is that audio game could not be well known or spread so much, or else targeting to the audiences who have difficulties in seeing, therefore the number of audiences is small. Thereby, a business for audio games are difficult to have and take off. So the visual impaired are now working, developing the audio games as part of their hobbies. So that's the culture even continuing today. So I suspect that I think there's going to be after the presentation a Q&A session. Therefore, I would like to end this overall explanation, but if you do have any questions for us and for me, I would like you to pose your question later on so we can have good interactions. Thank you so much, Nozawa-san. So Nozawa-san is now listening to the translator. And then while listening to translation, he is speaking in Japanese, and that's a surprise. And Tanaka-san says she is not able to do that simultaneously. So I was just awed by Nozawa-san making his comment amidst the translation. With the translation pause, he makes a intervention. That's a surprise. But anyhow, thank you very much, Nozawa-san. And there's many challenges entailed to audio games. And first of all, we lack tools to create, common tools to create audio games. So what we have been working on is that the games this developed by Nozawa-san, the most notable one, memorable one, and this was one of the very first that I played and was including the RPG. It was set at an elementary school, and at the school ground, the people are walking, and then the walk is expressed by the sound of a foot making a sound with sand. And just right next to me, Nozawa-san is looking or following what I am looking at. And then at one point, Nozawa-san mentioned to me, "Oh, you're climbing a tree," but I didn't know that. I was not aware of that. So when we are on an audio game, when an elevation changes, it could be expressed by heightening the level of the sound. And there's such a rule. And for those who have never played an audio game and who don't know at all about the rules of audio games, they don't recognize the difference of the rules. And I was also not aware of that. And I thought it interesting about all these differences. So the game developed by Nozawa-san, I wanted to roll out to other audiences because Nozawa-san, first of all, had a very strong motivation. Primarily, he had been motivated by trying to acquire other audiences, whether this people playing has a vision impairment or not. They needed to come together to work in the same game, and we needed to create a center, a place so that people, irrelevant of their capability or the vision side is different or not. So we created a place, and we created also a place where we can create an hackathon, and audio game plus archive was created. So that was created all around the world, inviting all the games that was developed in the world to make an exhibition. So Nozawa-san is also having an exhibition here today that he has been speaking about the world development of other countries, other talents creating. And this is also including blind drive. And why we have picked the drive blind drive is that irrelevant of people having the impairment in visions or not, it is easy for people to enjoy.
So we need to explore how to enjoy with sound, and I thought that had some similarity. Our approach is to enjoy with your body. That is something in common, and we wanted to explore that more, or maybe add more tutorials, which is easier to would make it easier to understand. So we had been considering the interaction designs. However, the blind drive offers the normal gameplays, but had some graphic support. That is how it has been provided. But the kind of end user is not limited to the visually impaired. It is open to everyone. So I think the approach was somewhat common to our approach. So we decided to exhibit. And when we started about this blind drive game, Nozawa-san didn't know that it had the graphic. And I explained that it had the graphic as well, and he then realized. So it is quite natural to play. It does not have any limitation that you have to be the visual or sighted person or not. So today we would like to hear some background of the development, but before we do so, I want you to see this game. Maybe some of you had already played, but Nozawa-san is going to demonstrate this play. We have the subtitle in Japanese. So the hurdle for the Japanese player is that they need to understand English. It might be a little bit difficult to understand only by sound, but I don't know how much I will be able to catch up with the speed. I may skip some, but I am going to read the subtitle or caption. And Nozawa-san will play this game. And we would like to do this for about 10 minutes. Nozawa-san, please allow me to prepare. Quite a naughty word has been used, like It's not like grammar. So if you hear from left, you will gear towards right. And if you don't control the handle, this would happen. So this kind of communication will continue. It came from left, so I gear towards the right. Came from left again, and it came from right, so I shift the gear to or handle to the right. If you listen carefully when you control the handle, you hear the creaking sound of the handcuffs. It's very detailed. So I'm just running opposite to the direction. Donnie seems to be joining this research because he'll be paid, but eventually he got hold of this. It's a cat's name. A huge sound of radio will be played. So you need to carefully find the sound of the car. And I went to the right. Emergency. And then crash. And then you found the radio stopped for a while. There's such a loud radio sound. Actually, I crashed the bicycle, but that will give me additional life point. Now I crash. You see this effect? And then my life points been maximized. I wonder how he had eaten it. There's some person behind me. The speed of the car has not been changed, so I should drive normally. And I went as far as two-thirds of the gameplay, I think. This is a digest, a demonstration version, but the real game is much longer than this. Ice cream. Salt caramel. So I intentionally crashed into the police car. So now Donnie is fighting against the police. So I intentionally crashed. It was not something I was supposed to be doing. So there are some tricks, and that's something fun. And the police email came.
So now they are underwater. And when you go inside under the water, you have a different sound. And there's something that you are not aware of. Something is coming into you, and this is a beep. Beep is the sound of the light points. There's a dolphin. 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 What is this? Oh, let's ask. Dolphin again. Oh, and this car becomes a submarine. Such a great car. And then it says, if you would like, please purchase our product. So this is just a cutout version of the main game, and main game is much more interesting. Although it is simple, it's such an interesting game. So now I would like to conclude our demonstration. Thank you so much for following. So from here on, let's hear from Mr. Giori about the background of development and how he came to the creation of Line Drive. Giori-san, please.
On this side, the HDMI. Hmm? Yeah, maybe. Yes. What's this? Okay. So hello, good afternoon. My name is Giori Politi, and I'm really happy to be here. And thank you all for coming, and thank you CCBT for inviting me and the Audio Game Center. And thank you Yukio for showing off the game, and Miyuki for the intro. So today I'm going to talk about how we design the game and to talk about the game mechanics and some of the accessibility feature of the game. I will start with a few words about myself. I'm a sound designer based in Tel Aviv, working mostly on games, VR and AR experiences, animation videos, and interactive installations. I'm a co-founder and member of Low Pay People, which is an art and technology collective who creates playful and unconventional digital experiences. As you can see on the screen, for those of you who can see, there's some images of our project that includes animation videos, music albums, installation, and games for both physical and virtual spaces. We work as a dynamic team that changes depending on the project, and we are working both on commercial projects for different clients and also on our own independent projects. Audio and sound has a big role, just a moment, in our projects. In many of our sound design projects, we're trying not only to support the experience with sound, but to bring the audio to the center. And we went all in on this approach in the game Blind Drive, which I created with my fellow game developer from Lo-Fi People, D.A. Ter. So Blind Drive is a black comedy adventure meets fast-paced arcade gameplay driven by a crazy B-movie plot, inspired by Tarantino and Wes Anderson films. We worked on the game for quite a long time, and the original idea was actually to create a site-specific installation where you sit in a car dashboard and experience how it is to drive a car but without seeing a thing. After a few experiments, we felt the idea is really fun and exciting, and we decided to turn it into a complete video games. At the time, we were not really aware of the genre of audio games. For us, it was just about creating a video game that happened to have most of its gameplay based on sound. But we were not very strict about this concept, so some of the tutorials in the game were based on images, and some of the UI did not have sound representation. During the development process, we noticed we are starting to get a lot of interest from visually impaired and blind gamers. So we contacted them and we started to run playtest sessions, and we realized that the game was really close to being completely accessible for blind players as it was without so many modifications. So with the help of the visual impaired community, we fixed all these loose parts, and which on the game side, it was mostly meant to make the UI and the life status, etc., represented by sound, and make the voice acting tutorials much clearer and precise, so everything will be very understandable without any visual cues. And the other thing was very technical, is to make the menu accessible with text to speech. And that was mostly it, to make this game accessible. So I will not play the trailer right now because you already saw quite a bunch of the game. But basically, I will explain basically about the story. So in the game, you play as Donnie, who signed up for a scientific experiment, but quickly find himself over his head, forced to drive a car while blindfolded and chained to the steering wheel. So he has to survive the road, only his ears. You play the game from Donnie's point of view, behind the steering wheel, so most of the sound and Foley in the game were recorded with a binaural microphone setup. Binaural microphone setup is basically a dummy head with two microphones, one in each ear, and it gives a very realistic sound recording, and when you play it back, it feels like you're really sitting in the spot. It feels really realistic. You can see in the images, for those of you who can see the setup we use for the recording, dummy head, this is in my car, and we recorded different sounds on this one, including banging some doors and going on the roof and jumping a bit, and I try to make it not too hard on my car. There are some graphics in the game, but the graphics don't give the player any information or help with the gameplay itself. The visuals, it's only serve as an atmospheric purpose. It was, for us, it was like in traditional video games. You have the supporting soundtrack, but you don't really need it most of the time in order to play the game. In our case, it was most of the play was in the audio, and the supporting was the video track. In the dashboard, you can see some lines that moving as you hold the keys or using your gamepad, and they're moving to the sides, depend on which side you're holding. And there are 3 hearts that indicates your life status, and you have a number of points, and you get each point for when you pass a car, and there is the distance meter on how long have you drive. So that's all you can see, and we also have a mode when you can switch it off if you want to play the game without staring at the screen, which is in our thought it's even much better and much more immersive. The visuals also helped us, I think, to get more mainstream players that would usually not play audio games. And so we had some visual to put on social medias and on the store pages. And I think it made it a bit more appealing, as in other audio games that a lot of them has only black or white screen and without many visuals. So I will now I will talk about the mechanics a bit and the development process. So the basic mechanic in the game is that you drive against traffic in the middle of a 2 lanes road. Cars are coming from the left or from the right, and you have to hold to the opposite side in order to avoid them. This is quite a simple, straightforward arcade mechanic that you can see in quite a lot of games, and it would be very easy to understand if we would use graphics. But without, when you have to paint the whole scene and interaction with sound alone, it gets a bit more complicated. So what did we do here? So first of all, precise sound design that really puts you, the player, in the driver's seat of a fast riding car. So having all the elements such as car engines, tires roll on the asphalt, and wind howling in the windows, and small bumps on the road, etc. And what really made this believable and immersive is all the small Foley sounds we recorded, the movement in the chair and the cuffs that changed rattling to the steering wheel when you move the controls, and some other moving stuff inside the car. The second thing is to have a very clear and precise sonic feedback for your controls. So every time you hold the key or using the gamepad, you hear a sharp tire skid sound, which is not so realistic and is very much exaggerated sound, but it needs to be like this in order to be very clear and playable. When you release the key, you hear another skid sound for getting back to the center. And this emphasized the arcade mechanic. As for the enemies, the cars, we use very clear and distinct and iconic sounds with clear approach ramp, so you really hear when they're getting close and pass you. Again here, it's semi-realistic sounds and very exaggerated in terms of levels and the time it approaches and direction of the sound, but it must be that way in order to be very playable. Another thing is the shoulder indications that mark the limits of the game scene. So if you hold too long for one side, you start drifting off the road and hear some dirt and rumbles, and if you have a gamepad, it starts to rumble, and then some impacts, and if you don't release and come back to the middle of the road, you crash. Now, the only missing information to the player in this level is to let them know that their basic position in the game is in the middle of a road between 2 lanes, Some players somehow gets it intuitively, but we didn't want to leave room for any doubt, so we use voice acting. In a certain part of the story, very naturally, the kidnapper tells Donnie on the phone, just drive straight in the middle of the road between the two lanes. Very straightforward. So voice acting helps to deliver more complex information to the players, and it can replace graphical tutorials and UI indication, and it can really paint the things that you cannot explain with sound alone. The trick for us is to incorporate the informative part of the script so they won't sound too didactic and will integrate organically into the story. I will now play a short bit from this basic mechanic. You heard it in the game, but just to repeat the stuff. I think there's no sound. Okay. Wait. This one. Yes, you can crush hard. Immersive, I said. So every time you get hit, you lose life, and if you get hit 3 times, you crash. Then you can restart the game, and sometimes you can get life back. So to keep the player informed with how many life left, sighted players can look at the dashboard and see the UI indication, the 3 hearts that indicates how much lives they left. But we also added a small ping alert sound that plays every time you get hit, indicating the remaining life. So to keep this sound within the car sound language and harmonious with the game, we used an alert sound like the one you hear when you leave your lights on. And there's another indication, a continuous one, which is more subtle, but it's increasing in rattling and suspension that indicates that your car is a bit damaged and you don't have full life. So this is how these indications sounds like in the game. So 2 pings for 2 lives left. So a few variation on this basic mechanic in the game includes driving with the window closed. So all the sounds are now muffled. A less clear and sharp enemy sounds impact the difficulty of the game quite a lot. And it's harder to play like this. What's nice about this variation is you can now hear very clearly all the Foley sounds, the driver movement in his chair, his breathing, the cuffs, and some other sounds. And in order to mix this right and precise, we used low pass filter on each sound layer independently, so we have maximum control of the mix and we could emphasize the important gameplay related information. So I will play a short bit of this level.
What the? Hey! The windows? Really?
I was worried you'd catch a cold.
So another variation is the driving with the radio on. You saw it in the demo. So the idea is that the music distracts you and it's harder to hear the cars through the blasting radio. In this one, we used quite an aggressive sidechain compression. So every time a car enemy plays, it's lowering the music, it's ducking the volume of the music, so you could hear the enemy car very clearly. You don't really notice it, but if we were not doing this, so you won't be able to really hear the car clearly through the blasting music. So we had to make changes, and it feels somehow like you have a super hearing. You heard it, so we can skip hearing this one again. We have some other variation in the game that include driving through tunnel. So there's a long reverb that blends everything together, and it's harder to play. And driving in the rain, so you have to listen through the rain and windshield wipers and many water splashes sound. Um, Another one is driving off-road. So you have dirt and rumble sounds, and now your enemies are not cars, but animals and some tractors. And driving underwater, as you saw the level, and your car becomes some kind of a submarine. And you have enemies that are dolphins and whales, torpedoes, and etc. Another aspect of the game is bonuses. So in our case, these are cyclists and ice cream trucks that you have to eat and that give you some power-ups. Now, you not only have to avoid every sound you hear, but you have to listen to the content of the sound itself and make a decision if to avoid it or to hit it. And this adds another layer of difficulty and makes things much more interesting. Here's again the ice cream truck that gives you some life back and some shield, some special shield.
Yeah! Wasn't that delicious?
Whoa! I've been told I have beeping from my computer. There's nothing on. I'm not sure. Hmm?
Going. Maybe your presentation timers will output some sounds. You know? Have you listened this sound? No?
No.
No? Okay.
You want to try to disconnect? I don't know.
Okay.
Mm,
今もしてる。Okay. Sorry?
yes. I'm sure maybe it's more my phone.
今 V600 から音出そうと思ってる。That's okay.
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 Perfect.
Please complete.
Yes. Where was I? Bonuses. Okay. So I will move to the police boss fight. So after some time in the game with these basic mechanics, we wanted to introduce some new gameplays. So we went for boss fights. And the first boss in the game is the police. And it's built after some bosses in classic games such as Mario, Zelda, or Cuphead. And it works like this. In a certain part of the story, the police find you and start driving just behind you. Regular comes cars still coming from in front, and from time to time the police tries to attack you. It comes on your side and try to hit you and get you off road. When they're on your side, you have a short time window to try to hit them before they hit you. It's a short window of about half a second. And two things that helped us deliver these mechanics were, one, the use of a loud and clear police siren sound. So you really hear when the police is on your side and can easily differentiate it from regular passing cars. And the second thing is the use of voice acting from the police megaphone. So each time before the police attacks, it says a sentence such as pull over, so it will be clear he is about to attack. So here the police level.
Yeah, take that.
Okay. And there are some visual of police siren here, red and blue lights, but they don't give any indication of the police attack or its position. It's only atmospheric. Another issue in the police level we came across is this. What is the difference in sound between the sound when the police car hits you, which is negative, and the sound where you hit the police, which is positive? They are both car impact sounds. So to differentiate the two, after a few experiments, we solve it like this. The hit intensity and sharpness, so the positive hit, when you hit the police, is sound rounder and softer, and the negative one, when the police hits you, is much sharper and much more intense. And another thing is in the negative hit, the skid and the rattling sounds are much stronger and much more intense. So I will play an example. I will play only the impact layers. So the positive version sounds like this, and the negative one sounds like this. So much stronger and more intense. Another thing we added to make this even clearer is a layer of positive blip sound, only in the positive hit version, like this. And the last thing on top of this, so the players don't get will really understand what happens, is using the voiceover of Donnie, amplifying the situation. So I will play all the hit sounds together, the positive version.
Gotcha!
And the negative one.
Hey, cut it out!
So it's, yeah, that's the life status. So it's much easier to understand like this. Another common game mechanic that you didn't see in the demo is dodging gunshots. And this mechanic is all about reflexes. Gunshots in the game can come from all kinds of direction, and the thing here is to move to any other place other than the one you're at when you hear the gunshots. In the game, it takes about half a second from the moment you hear the gunshot until it hits you. And this is quite a lot, but in the context of the game, to really be able to hear the gunshot, react quickly, and survive, we have to use this amount of time. And to fill in the dead time after each shot, we added a shot with sound like to filling the blank space. Another difficulty aspect here is how far is the shooting gun. So if the gun is very far, you hear the sound softer and it's much less sharp, so it's harder to hear it and react. So we limited the distance the shooting gun can be, so it will never get too soft. So here is an example of this mechanic in the game. So in this case, it was another boss that shoots you, but this mechanics of gunshot is repeating in a few places in the game. Another small mechanics in the game is based on the combination of reflexes and quick speech comprehension. It's the GPS level. Here, your kidnapper puts the GPS on to guide you through some sharp turns, and it starts quite simple with the GPS just telling you to turn left or to turn right, and you have to make this turn. But after a while, the GPS starts teasing you, tries to confuse you, and gives you driving instruction really quick or weird ones, and just in the last moment before the turn. So this one, you have to react quickly and have no time for mistakes. Here's a short part of this level.
Turn right. Turn left. How about right? The other right. Let's see. Turn left. Turn right. Why do I even bother? Turn left. Turn right. Wrong.
So by far the most difficult mechanic in our game to design and to play as well was the last boss in the game, which is the chopper. Some spoilers here, but in this scene, you drive in the bad guy's headquarters. Your grandma is on the car's roof holding a bazooka rocket launcher, and apart from regular enemies on the road, there is a chopper circling around your head and trying to take you down with a machine gun. Now you have a certain time window where the chopper is out of ammo and going far to reload, and then you have to chase him off the road, and your grandma tries to take him down with her bazooka rocket launcher. This level was much inspired from Tarantino's Death Proof movie ending scene. I will show you a bit part of this ending scene. Very short bit. So the main difference between designing sound for film and audio-based game is that in an audio game, you can change the listener perspective so easily, such as in movie. You can make drastic cuts in the level of different object because the player will lose orientation. As you see, like in the movie, the camera is always changing positions, and for instance, if the camera is looking on the wheel, so you will hear the wheel much stronger to amplify the situation. Or here, if you see the girl on the car, you will hear her scream. So in audio games, we cannot make these drastic changes because the player will don't know what's happening and where he is and who is he playing. So there are many other differences in between designing the sound for film and for games. We can discuss it later a bit if it's interesting. And for us, what really helped to deliver this scene was a precise three-dimensional mix. So each sound will have its own position in the 3D space, so the player will be aware where things are very precisely. Also pacing the action over time, so they won't overlap, and each sound information will have its own spot in time. Also prioritizing the important gameplay information and ducking the less important layers helped to clean the mix. And lastly, here as well, we use quite a lot of voice acting from the bad boss in the chopper and grandma on the car's roof to guide the player with what they have to do. And we try to do it in quite organic way with the story and not too didactic. Now you have to do this and now you have to do that. So I will play a short example from this fight.
Yeah! All right! You got it, Grandma! Hey, Grandma!
What?
Love you!
Look out!
Oh, sorry.
Okay. While playtesting the game, we found it was really hard to anticipate how one will be good in playing an audio-based game. There was no specific skill set that could give us a prediction of how one will succeed in the game. We saw a huge range of reaction to the difficulty. Some people that the game was really easy for them and didn't get hit at all, to people that felt the game was really hard. So that's why we ended up doing 3 different difficulty levels for the game. Plus we added the option to skip level after a few crashes, so players won't get so frustrated if they have hard time with a certain level or mechanic. And the different aspects that impacted the difficulty the most, and the ones we end up tweaking for the different difficulty levels were pacing, so how fast enemies are coming at you, no overlaps. This is a hard rule. Every important gameplay information has to have its own spot in time. Sound density. Although our brain can process many sounds together, it's harder to distinguish and not get distracted by unimportant information. So there's a limit on how much background sonic details we can load at our players. So more information mean harder to play. Sound clarities of the enemies or other gameplay information. So they should sound clear, iconic, and precise. If you make an enemy sound softer or less sharp, it has a straight impact on the difficulty of the game. And the last thing is mix, the level of the different elements and the balance between the gameplay information and the background atmospheric information. For an example, on the easy difficulty, so of course everything is slower and you have more time to react, but also the background noise and sounds are softer and the enemy sounds are louder. Plus, they are panned wider to the sides, so it will be much clearer to notice them. We found there is one axis which is on one side is playability, and on the other side is immersion. If you go too much towards the immersion, so the experience is not playable at all. It sounds very cool, but it's not playable. And if you go too much towards playability, you will lose the immersion and realism. So the real key is somehow to find a sweet spot between those two in order to create a playful, powerful, and interactive experience. That was all for now about the mechanics. Thank you very much for listening. Thank you, Audio Game Center and CCBT, for inviting me here to talk about the game. And if you have a question, I think it's later, right? The question. And you can also reach out by email or on Twitter if you have a question later. So that was all. Thank you.
ありがとうございます。
Thank you. It seems that we are approaching towards the end of the talk, but we do have some Q&A session. Now, firsthand, Nozawa-san, you showed the demonstration in the beginning. I think you are kind of playing into this blind drive quite a lot. Any surprise or anything that you found as kind of a well-developed part of it? Would you be able to share something you had found out? Yes, the first surprise that I had was when the windows were closed. I was very surprised. You know, making driver listen to radio or closing windows, meaning that from kind of a blind or impaired people would not come up with such notion, because it probably is normal that you are not able to hear because of the surrounding noises. And decorate that as a game is, at least to me, didn't come up to my mind. I think this is an audio game, but I think this is bringing a new value to the game scene. And another surprise was something mentioned by Jody-san, but the details of the sound design, I was very astonished. At the end of the game, when you kill the enemies, or you beat the enemy, the grandma on the roof and the cat Wilkins were running on the rooftop and sneak into the car through the window. And that is quite an interesting scene. So those two will come from the rooftop to the window. That is the altitude difference, and that sense was very detailedly described by the sound. And the grandma and cat are coming in from the right-hand side. So Donnie and grandma and Wilkins will hug on the right-hand side, meaning that this car is left-handed. So Donnie had to shift the seat. So normally the Japanese cars are right-hand cars. So it's not common to us. So I realized that, oh, it is not in Japan. The car is left-handed. So from the sound, I was able to find that out. So sound actually describes the reality, the real information. And that was something I was really moved. And today I discovered that using dummy head, you use the dummy head to record. I didn't know that. So once again, I was very surprised. And my question could be, the cutscene sound could be recorded by the dummy head, but those scenes coming down from the rooftop to the car, different heights, or the car sound during the game, using the software, I think you need to mix. So the sound of the dummy head and binom or library recorded sound utilization, you need to mix those. Maybe you had to purchase the sound from the third party, and there may be difference from those sound that you recorded by yourself and third party created sound. And actually dummy head based recording and software based binaural sound, I think there are some differences. But how did you design those differences? Because it is very hard to discriminate those two. So I wondered how you were able to do that.
In the game, we used three kind of technique to design the sounds. So really, the first one, as you described, is the dummy head recording. And for instance, for the grandma steps on the roof, I mentioned earlier, I really went on the car's roof and make steps on the car and make some transformation. But it's really the clean recording. So there's not much transformation in the sound, and it sounds very realistic. You really hear the movement and the elevation, as you said. For the voices, we recorded them in a studio, so they were not recorded in a car, but we used plugin and specifically DRVR Pro, which is a binaural processing to um, to move the sounds accordingly. And we work quite a lot to set up the sounds that it will be really close to the sound we recorded um, in the in the binaural setup. Another processing we did is using IR, like in the car itself. So, for instance, the sound when grandma coming from the window, I recorded an IR impact, impact response, which is you play a sound like this, and then you get the characteristic of the sounds and implement them on another sounds. So I recorded in different locations in the car and then play it back. So grandma, for instance, I did this once on the roof and play this sound and recorded inside with the binaural setup and play this impulse in different places. And then I move the studio recording sounds of grandma to this different location. Another technique, as you mentioned, we used quite a lot library sounds for the sounds we could not record, which includes dolphins and, and some passing cars. Because at the beginning, actually, when we started the project, I went outside with a binaural setup. I can show you later on images of me standing in the side of the road with a binaural head, just capturing passing cars. But the thing is that that was not interesting enough because the regular cars you hear on the street don't go fast enough and doesn't have much interesting engines most of the time. Maybe I could wait for a few days and I would get lucky to have some really cool cars. So I needed to have like really big motorcycles and like big cars that have interesting characteristic that the game will be interesting. So that's why in the end we use different library sounds for this one. Also gun shooting. I don't have access to recording gun shooting. And they're different. So we mix all these elements together.
ありがとうございます。
Thank you very much for that explanation. So DRIR Pro, the software, I've been utilizing such a software myself too. And that is a great software. So I just understood and agreed with you when you said about that mechanism. Oh, it's that one, is what I thought. So I think we have other questions too. And I'm considering about the time limitation. We only have 30 minutes to go. And I have a question to Giori-san. So when you are creating audio games, when you are starting, it often happens that you might start like a test for people listening, and then the players try opting out for the sound level, and then it start playing, and there's variation to that. And then going beyond that is a difficult thing. For instance, what I mean to say is that in audio games, let's say that there's scarce games that are very long, but blind game compared to that, it's a very interesting but an unrealistic game that makes you feel realistic until the very end. And it has an interesting aspect that people would be excited until the very end. For instance, yesterday, my friend who has visual impairment came over to this game center and we played the game together. And she has been into blind games so much, she was playing with it around 1.5 hours. I was assuming that she would just try out and then just leave the game, but then she wanted to go until the very end, but we were not able to afford that time for her, therefore she had to end midway. So it's very immersive. And in the last, Giori-san said the playability and immersiveness, which is in the one axis, and it's for you, the designers, to take a sweet spot between the playability and immersiveness. And while thinking about that, story making is also very important because this is related to sound creation, sound recording, and I think this is part of the big feature of the blind drive. So, apart from Giori-san, what or how was your team members? Who were they?
The team members. Okay, so the main team members was D.A. Ter, as I mentioned before. He did the programming and some of the game design, and he was also doing the voice for the bad man, for the bad guy, and he was doing the dashboard visual as well. We had a graphic designer, Shira Natan, that did the menus and the maps and all the other graphics in the game. And we had Yonil, who did the poster graphic for the game. And then we had the voice actors, which is like the main ones are Tzachi Cohen, that's doing Donnie. It was really good. We had a few sessions in my studio with him. And Gani Tamir, who plays the grandma, and she was amazing. And that's, I think, the main team of the game. But mostly day by day, it was me and Doron, the editor, that we worked quite a long time.
最初にお話、すいません、名前がメモになかった。
So I was So the first person that you mentioned has been the storyteller, the story creator. I forgot the name. I was not able to jot down his name. Was
GA テラー。
Theater, yeah.
なんかこのゲームってその音を中心
and this game is having central features on the sound, and at the same time, the sound designer is at the core of the creation of the blind drive. And this is very rare within the video game universe still.
I didn't get it. Can you ask in English? I didn't get the question.
あもう一回言った方がいいですかね。
So can I try saying that again? So this game is having audio at its center as a video game. And at the same time, this game is centering on the sound designer to create a video game. So this is one epoch-making creation of video games, is what I think.
Okay.
And while saying that, so the blind drive itself is very interesting as such an example. And within the game industry, I think it's the way of such a game creation is not a mainstream yet. But using this game, the players and the industries, what were their responses to your game?
So, surprisingly, we got very good responses to the game that we didn't expect, actually. Also, mainstream indie festivals were featuring the game, and it won some very suspicious awards. And Apple, we were nominated for Apple Design Awards, and Apple featured the game on the App Store for quite a long time. Actually, we also won a game in Tokyo Game Show a few years ago, and we didn't expect this much good feedback, and I think having this feedbacks and reviews, like we heard many people saying that they never played anything like this before, and this is the first time they're experiencing something like that, which and it's very cool and very immersive and very strong experience. And I think like it helps like now people who play this game can, if they happen to see another audio game, maybe they can say, oh, I played something like that before, maybe I will try this, it's cool. And I think it helps to bring more eyes on the medium.
さっき視覚障害者コミュニティの話
So you mentioned about gaining some help from the visually impaired community. So were there any needs or requests from the community? And how did you get to know that community? So you said during the presentation, you said there was not much correction to your original audio video. So it was just about the interface that you corrected, is what I understood according to your presentation. So what was specifically the communications among or between you yourself and the impaired community? And if there should be anything to be shared, please do so.
So, firstly, we were really surprised that, as I said, we were not well, we didn't know the community and the audio game genre before we started to work in the game. And after we've been in one festival and there was demo version that leaked on the internet and was going around, so many people started to contact us from this community and we were surprised to find such a big community, like and really warm and really nice people and very positive. Um, so we decided to start talking with them. Some specific people that contacted us, and also we publish on our Twitter that we're going to run play testing sessions, and if people want to sign up, and we got a lot of responses. So we sent out version of the game. We play tested with sighted player and visually impaired players, mostly half-half, and people also wrote us like a written feedback. We had a form. Plus, we also looked at analytics. We put really detailed analytics in the game to see how much people play, until what levels it's hard for them. So we could also see if people using the voice reader, the accessibility mode, so we could see if it's we could think that it's a visually impaired player, and we could see the difference in playing, and there was not much difference actually in the play, and as I said, we were quite surprised that the game was, I would say, really close to being completely accessible. Like if you see the first tutorial in the game, I think when you hear the first car in the game, so we want to explain the mechanic, and you see an arrow on the screen that say turn right or to turn left. And originally that was the tutorial. Like we had the voice acting, but this we didn't explain so much graphically in the tutorial itself. Graphically, when I say like in voice, explain the situation. So after running testing without visuals, we really shaped the text. So we really worked on single words. We change a word and we change a word to see what works best and what is more understandable. So in order to make this action, and as I said, there were a few features, but that we were being asked from the visual impaired community, but it was mainly like a small features, and we didn't have any like any big part that was not working for visually impaired but was working for sighted player. We didn't have this, so like the game was playable with closing your eyes. That was also the idea, like so we were almost there. It was mostly technical, like the also getting feedback which is not technical from the community, as we got from sighted player, about what do you think about the game? Is it too long? Is it too short? Is it too difficult? Too easy? What you think specifically, if you have ideas? So this is feedback that we got from all of our playtester, regardless sighted or not, and and I found that the community is really like warm and really eager for good content, good video games and audio games, and it was really nice to find this.
なんか難易度
The setting of the difficulties maybe is impacted by this relationship, maybe. You didn't intentionally ease the level of difficulties, but you just offered something that you had to offer to everybody. You just came up with the difficulty levels regardless of directing it to the visually impaired community or the sighted people? You didn't have any differentiation.
Creation.
Mm.
There is no. We created one game for everybody,
Mm.
and it happened to be accessible. And we like when we find out it has more optional audience, so we made it so it will be accessible, but there was no difference in the design for this or for this. That was designing experience that you can play with your eyes closed or if you're not sighted. So that was the concept.
なんか先ほど本当に細か
So it explains the detail mechanism. So technically, I think everything is here. I think you are continuously evolving. So you have the platform, but sound oriented game development has not been really proliferated. But in order to make more games to be created from sound, starting from sound, what do you think you need to do?
The question is what to do to have more games. Okay, so I think that there is a bit of a problem, which is a chicken and the egg problem, that because there's not so many popular games, audio games, so there's not much budget and resources going on for these games. It's really hard to get when we tried to get finance. We went to publishers of regular games like video games, and most of them said, all of them said, well, we don't know how to sell this kind of game. Sorry. And in the end, we were self-publishing the game, so we didn't have any other resources. And I think because of that, there's not many example of high quality games that get the attention and time and resources and development resources. Like for medium indie game, you need like probably 5 to 10 people that work for 2-3 years on a game, and this hardly the situation. As Yukio said, it's mostly people that doing this on their spare time and is the main thing. So it's really hard to get really big and high quality production. So I don't know what's the solution, but I think that if maybe some funds or can put resources in this kind of games, so people will be able to produce a higher level of production value, so it can get more popular. I think in our case, we put quite a lot of resource in the game, our own time and budget, and I think it wasn't hate, it's not that there's a lot of audience like the potential of video games, but it had something, so it had some recognition, and I think there is potential for other games, but they need some intention and devotement.
その今も少し出ましたけれど、それをクリアして作られ
So you just mentioned, and you cleared all the obstacles, the challenges, and created the blind drive.
こういう今までにないゲームを作ろう。
So did you have an intention to create a game that has never been existing within the world, and then you invested it within the blind drive with that intent. Is that so? Oh, okay, okay. So, did you have intent? So you have been clearing off, overcoming all the problems or challenges to create blind drive. Is that you already had a clear intention from the first to create something different and injected a lot of funds into it? Is that so?
We will do another game or no? I didn't get
I wanted to know the loss of resources, and that's what we face like in our project as well. But you have achieved, I mean, to release
yeah.
such a game. But was that your kind of your group's decision to kind of invest in a game which has never been created before?
It somehow just happened. Actually, it wasn't as intention. Like I said, the first idea was to make a small installation with driving a car, and then I made a small demo myself, and I showed it to my partner, the Aether, and we said, "Wow, it's cool. Let's start working on it." And we did a demo of about 20 minutes with him recording all the voices. He was playing all the voice acting, and we had some levels. Some of them are still in the game, but in a different quality. And we had this 20 minutes demo, and we sent it out for a Google competition, indie game competition, and somehow we got to the finals, and alongside with quite a successful indie games, and it was only a demo. So, and then start to have quite many people interested in the game. So we had we decided, okay, let's continue with it. Let's develop it more and more and more. And it somehow happened. We didn't decided, okay, we're going to do a game like this and like this in this scale. Actually, it came up much bigger than we expected in the beginning, and we invested much more time than we thought. So that's it.
でもそういうこうきっかけはやっぱり何でもビジュアルがついているっていう。
So I think the visual is entailing to some extent that has been spoken or appealing to the mainstream user. Do you think so? So the visual entailing had some meaning to appeal to the mainstream users. Do you think so?
Yes. Like the visual, I think it helps quite a lot. Although it's very minimalistic, but it is something that bring like player that you used to look at the screen, even if they also regular hearing stuff like podcast and stuff, but they're also regular to seeing something on the screen and not just a black screen. So I think it helps. Also, something that very minimalistic helps to connect more people to this, and also to, as I said, to put on social media something, you know. It's easier with an image than with only sound, because many people just mute their phones all the time and.
なるほど。なんかそのオーディオゲーム
Got that. So audio game not being a niche, but to have a sturdy position within the game industry. We ourselves are wanting to do that, and we are always discussing about that. So your approach with minimal graphics, and in order to have some trigger so that mainstream will be appealed to your study or game, I think we learned very much from that. So I've been talking all along, so maybe Nozawa-san would like to make a comment. So thank you so much for the microphone. So about the future of the audio game, how it is going to be expanding, I would like to question on that. So in terms of the future of the audio game, I think I myself is within a very complicated position. So I will explain about that. So we may lack budget, but in order to secure budget, we must sell to a more larger population, the audiences. However, those impaired with visions going forward will be scarcer in population because of the development of medical expertise. I think people will not be totally not being able to see anymore, but will be starting to see. Therefore, we must create our artwork, our game also fit and suitable for those who can see. In order to make a collaboration within the people who can play with eyesight and not, and to create a video game so to be enjoyed by both, I have not ensured or garnered a specific characteristic or strength right now yet. In my case, I have another job working, therefore I can't spend and dedicate to audio game creation so much. So would it be the case that audio game should become a mainstream, or else the other way around, that audio game is a niche, staying as a niche game, it, but having an accessible game more. So maybe it could be the case that the audio game could be going into the accessibility side so that it could be remaining niche, but then many accessibility could increase so that many people will be appealed to that. So it could be either way, therefore there's no right or wrong answers, but since we cannot foresee which direction the audio game is heading for within the industry, it's very difficult for me to answer where my position is right now. So, in another sense, I think we can say that the blind game, a blind drive, is just sitting within the middle of the spectrum that you just mentioned. The blind drive could be just standing within the middle. Yes, I think that is very correct. So in order for such an audio game such as Blind Drive to be appealing to many people, I support very much to set up a center so that many more people will be able to enjoy such games even more. And someday in the future, I would like to cooperate with various diverse people using more larger budget to create an audio video. That's my dream that I still have. So I think I'll keep that. I'll keep my dream until I grow older.
なんかコメントがあれば
Uh,
ぜひ。
it was a question, or
Just
yeah, I think it's an issue that it's really hard to bring resources. We actually also worked on other project as we worked on this, and this project we did not bring us any income until we released it, and we also invested in the other people we worked with. So yes, it is difficult, and also yes, I think the industry, like mainstream games, starting to have accessibility in more and more high-profile games, such as The Last of Us 2 and Forza racing games, and so there is, but I don't. I actually interested to hear from you, Yukio, what is the difference between playing an audio game such as Blind Drive or another audio games and to play accessible games, a video game that had accessibility, such as The Last of Us or other game, I don't know, that you played. What is the difference between for you in the experience?
これは日本語で
Should I answer in English or Japanese? Last of Us, that had some accessibility added game. It has quite a narrowed down the information volume. As a result, it had become playable because they narrowed down the information. So, specifically speaking, it is playable. That kind of game is playable. For example, Last of Us Part 2, initially scene start with very cold outdoor snow falling and strong storm is there, and the snow is maybe flowing, and if you are standing there, the protagonist shoulder, you see the accumulation of the snow. So that kind of information is not known to us. So what we can do in that game is that we are able to move to a different story if we go towards this direction. So we need to just get that support to go which direction. And the camera will automatically change the direction and we just move forward. So we are just kind of forwarding the stick. That is all what we do in that game. So how the image is beautiful or the face of the characters, we don't understand that. Because it is accessible, but it is more playable. So with the audio game, it is only sound because it is created from the sound. So when I hear the sound, the information volume is all sound. That is it. So we have quite a sense of ease just understanding everything about this game. So that is a difference. Accessible games allow us to play with other people. So when we discuss with other people, maybe we are able to talk about the same game. So that is a benefit. Meanwhile, audio game is where I can be myself and I can play as I wish. That is a benefit. I think those are the difference.
That's actually what I thought about the difference, but it's nice to hear it from a first position.
はい、ちょっとだいぶ時間
Sorry, we are a bit behind our schedule, but I think you had articulated a very important point, so I didn't want to rush you. I think we are already in time, but we would like to get a question. My name is Bobby. I'm 53 years old, and I had not really been playing game much. And I am uh, blind, born blind, and I am the musician, the jazz musician. And the voice guide of the movie, the voice description was originally created for the movie about 30 years ago. And I just remember that moment. The visually impaired people had started to enjoy the movie because of that voice description and the behind the scene. So many people had been involved and did a lot of this. And not all movies, but astonishing amount of the movies are now provided with the audio description. And when you discussed about this difference of the audio game and accessible game, I think it is the audio drama or radio drama and the movie with audio description. I think it is very similar differences. So all the movie information cannot be replaced by sound if you have some audio description. Maybe they will try to prioritize what's important to keep the audio description within length of the movie. So maybe this is a tricky way to say, but make visually impaired people to feel like they had seen the movie, they had watched the movie. And then they are able to share the common topic of discussion after seeing the movie, but actual background information or actor actings are not really seen by those visually impaired people. So somewhat kind of a behind the scene discussion needs to be supporting the experience of watching that audio movie. Sorry, the movie with the audio description, but the audio movie, like a radio movie. I don't know whether that still exists, but some radio stations offer that radio movie. I don't know if they do that now or not. But as Nozawa-san said, what we get as information is something that is on the air. That is all. So the scale and quality of the product is of course different from the real movie or visual movie, which has a huge amount of investment. So the difference between that radio movie and the huge fund supported movie are quite different. So I think that is probably happening in this gaming world as well. And Para-Olympic has just been completed, but there are a sports category called blind sports, and that is being arranged for the visually impaired people, like blind soccer game. Compared to the real soccer game, the scale is totally different, not as exciting as the real able-bodied people's soccer games. And I experienced that as well, but the scale and excitement are so different. So as game creator, Nozawa-san might have this frustration inside of you. So the blind sports have more than 100 years of history, and the audio description supported movie has been existing for 30, 40 years already. And then audio games history is now about 20 years. I'm not sure, but because of the emergence of the blind drive, I think audio game is starting to mark the start of this history. I am the musician, and maybe I will be lying on bed for good, but thanks to Nozawa-san or you, I will be able to enjoy game every day, although I'm just lying on the bed, thanks to the blind drive. So I really wish that everyone involved in this kind of game development should be lighted more and have more fun. I do not have any particular question, excuse me, but I just wanted to share the fact about the difference between the movies, sports, fashions, how the visually impaired people needs to be kind of integrated into this normal society. Should we continue to consider that, or should we just be ourselves and don't care about the normal society or maybe the able people's society and just live on our own way? So that's something I wanted to ask Nozawa-san. Oh, this is a very challenging question. My assumption is that this is quite biased by each individual's preference. But I myself would like to collaborate with the able-bodied or maybe sighted persons. I don't have any particular reason. I just prefer that. Having said that, visually impaired, customized something like those people, uh, anything. There are some jokes which can be only understood by visually impaired people. It doesn't really pop up to my mind right now. There are some stand-up comedian, Yutaro Hamada. It's a Japanese blind stand-up comedian, and he had customized some jokes to the kind of able-bodied people. And I do understand it is fun to understand something we only be able to understand. Our community can just understand, but I prefer to enjoy both. That's how we are, or how I am at this moment. But I think there are diverse preferences, and because of this diverse preferences, we are able to come up with balanced things. I think there are many things that we are able to enjoy in common outside of games, but why do you want to make this a collaboration or joint enjoyment in this game? Well, I'm not really particularly focused on the game, but today this is a topic about the game, therefore I'm talking about the game, but my interest is not only limited to games. Thank you very much. Thank you. Playability and immersiveness. Just Giori-san earlier proposed, but it is not just to the gaming field, but also I think this is common to all the accessibility issues. Playability wise, you just ensure the minimum amount of information. The immersiveness is different perspectives. So I realize that. Thank you very much. So I think we are about time to close this session. Sorry, we had extended our time, but I had some more questions to ask Giori-san, but unfortunately I'm not able to cover. I do wish that we have another opportunity. And Steam also offer this game, blind game. The fact that there are a few more games on Steam. And when it comes to those games which can commonly enjoyed by sighted and sight impaired people, is quite limited. But this game will give you many tips to provide playability and immersiveness. So Giori-san probably will stay with us after this event. So maybe if you have a question, please ask him directly. Thank you very much, everyone, for joining.
Thank you very much. And for the visitors, we would like you to help us out by answering our questionnaire. Audio Center plus CCBT. This will be durated until September 16th. And after this presentation and Q&A, this place is open for your play, and we still have the panelists here within the venue. Therefore, please enjoy communication with them. And thank you very much for today. Thank you.